You ever been to her house?
No.
You know she has a whole 49er room.
I could only
Yeah,
assume.
it's one of those houses that has like a drop down lower level, and one whole room is 49ers with helmets and paraphernalia. Yeah,
See, it's
she's
funny
diehard.
because I'm like the biggest fan ever, but I don't collect paraphernalia.
Oh,
I'm
she
kind of just
does.
like what I go to the games,
Hmm.
and I'm like, I go, I go to the game. I don't fucking buy nothing at the snack. I get a water.
Hmm.
I don't care about fucking tailgating.
Hmm.
I don't care about any of that extra stuff. I'm there to watch the game,
Hmm.
and that's it. If they win, I'm happy. If they lose, I'm fucking miserable. I'm not like, hey, this was a fun trip. I really enjoyed it, right? It's all about the game. I don't give a shit about anything else.
I wouldn't be surprised if my sponsor had 49er chonies on right now. You know what I mean?
Before we get into this episode of Not So Anonymous with EJ Areca, please make sure you take time, like, and subscribe on all platforms. And if you're enjoying the content, please share it on your social media platforms. If you want to support us at all, just bang it out, like and subscribe, man. Thank you guys very much.
Not so anonymous with the. No, I can't do it. Not so anonymous with EJ Areca.
We're here with my friend Tanya, and first of all, thank you for opening up your house to us
Absolutely.
and allowing us to come in. I've known Tanya probably since I've been clean, right? I've seen her around different places. I had the opportunity to come have her chair a meeting that I was secretarying at the time. I've heard her story. I know she has amazing recovery. I've been fortunate enough through my social circle to get to know Tanya and her wife, right?
Hmm.
And so I'm super grateful for you taking the time to do this.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I always like to start off by asking you, what's your clean date?
August 5th, 2002. So I have 20 years and about 6 months clean.
Right. And so do you still keep track of like every single month and day, or is it just like, oh, another year is here again?
No, really, I just go year by year. But when I knew you were coming, I was like, August, September, October, November, December, January, February. So I know it's about, 20 years and 6 months. So
Nice.
normally I just go year by year.
And so what does that clean date mean to you?
I mean, it means a lot. It means a lot because I'm not someone that came around and got clean the first time. You know what I mean? It took me several tries. I was a chronic relapser. So I didn't get it the first time, the second time, or the third time. It was more like a revolving door for me. And my clean date was written in pencil. So I'd get a clean date and I'd erase it and I'd start over and I'd erase it. So it was a struggle for me. You know what I mean? So finally I felt like I came and I put my clean date and I wrote it in pen. And
Nice.
so it means something because I really had to work hard to get that clean date and keep it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, we always, and it's funny because these interviews always start off kind of the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But we always like to qualify, right, for the unengaged that might be watching this
Mm-hmm.
or listening to this. Because if they're hearing you, you don't sound like a drug addict,
Mm-hmm.
right? We were just talking about this with your grandkid that went to the meeting the first time, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
like, all your friends are drug addicts, right? And if they're watching this, you sure as hell don't look like a drug addict today, right? So like, what did life look like for Tanya? Like, I mean, we can go back as far as you want to go back, right? It's up to you. But what did life look like for you coming up, and what led you to. This podcast is brought to you by our friends at Sorensen's Ace Hardware, located at 402 Washington Avenue in Los Banos, proudly serving the community since 1947. Please check out our friend at Sorensen's for all your hardware needs. Come on, guys, support those who support us. Thanks, Sorensen's.
I think for me, like, a lot of us have similar stories in that a lot of people started young. They started early, when they were like in their early teens or even younger than that. But for me, I didn't start till I was like 26 years old.
Right.
And so for me, that was where I looked at the differences and not the similarities. And so I did grow up in a dysfunctional childhood. There was a lot of abuse and things like that. And so when I got married, I got divorced. I lived on the East Coast, and then I came back here to California. And then I started using. And so I started using my drug of choice. And for me, I thought, it's something that I can engage in socially, every month. But that quickly picked up pretty quickly. And so I was off to the races, and then I started getting fired from jobs, escorted off the premises, getting fired on my day off, literally like on Friday, you know what I mean? And got in domestic violence relationships, and it was just really, really bad. You know what I mean? And then I had never heard of a 12-step program until I ended up in a residential treatment facility.
Right.
You know, I had gotten kicked out of a house. I was in a relationship. I was waiting on the sidewalk. And next thing you know, I was in a residential treatment facility. And it was so funny because, when the person I was with, who was also my dealer, brought me there, I remember I walked in and I was covering up my head and I was like, I'm so embarrassed to be here. And it wasn't until the fog kind of lifted about a week later, I was like, wait a minute, why am I embarrassed? Everybody else is here for the same exact reason. You know what I mean? And then I started getting treatment and I got introduced to the 12 steps that I had heard about what 12 steps were all about. And then I started this whole process of learning about what recovery was and getting introduced to different programs. But I didn't stay clean.
Right.
So I relapsed like over and over and over again. So, but what I did learn was that there was a place I could go, people I could talk to, steps and traditions and things like that. But man, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was
So
hard.
like you talked about, like as a youth being introduced to like dysfunction, maybe violence in the home, and not starting, your drug using career until you were 26. Would you say that like the things that you saw when you were young, you started emulating those even before you started using in your relationships, and maybe something like that was what made like using a solution to those problems?
Absolutely. Because what I learned at an early age was that, one, I didn't have a voice. And two, my dad wasn't a proclaimed alcoholic, but I can tell you that alcohol was a solution to everything that ailed him.
Right.
And so that was one of the things, like that dysfunction was normal to me. So when I started using, like that lifestyle was still normal. Like chaos was normal to me. And so I wanted to seek something outside myself to make me feel better. You know what I mean? So it was really abnormally normal, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes sense.
You know what I mean? And so I finally realized what getting clean was. The one good thing that happened was that I used so late in life, like that I had exposure to what it meant to like get a job, go to school. I graduated from school. I had some college under my belt. A lot of us that like go through addiction haven't had those experiences because we use so early. Like I had some sense of what some part of normalcy was. Like I knew how to make my bed and get up and have a normal routine, but there was just so much other like dysfunction that went behind it that I was trying to like coexist in two worlds, and I couldn't do that.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's like the interesting thing is having, because you're right. So many of us started using at such an early age. We were off track, and we didn't have any record of what normal life looked like until we got clean. And it took years after to be like, oh, wait a minute, this life is so much better, right? So, I mean, I could only imagine the torment of having an established normal life and then starting to use and losing all that. And then I got to assume at some point you were like in the middle of a lake without a paddle, right? How do I get back here? So like how long did your using go on from the age of 26 to?
I was trying to figure out the other day, how old was I when I really got clean? And I don't even remember how old I was. My using career wasn't really that long. It might have been like 6 years. It really wasn't that long, but anytime I do something, I do it 120%, right. And I remember one time I was in a hotel, and, we were using, and I had to use the restroom. There was no plumbing. There was no lights. There were candles, and I had to squat over a bucket. And I was just like, I can't. Like, I'm a little bougie. I'm a little high maintenance. And I was like, this is not the life for me. You know what I mean? Right. So I had these little moments of clarity. You know what I mean? And I was in a field one day, driving. And I had to go behind this, barbed wire fence and cameras everywhere, and I'm getting frisked from top to bottom. And I'm like, this is not the life for me. You know what I mean? And my mom thought I was clean at one time. I just had all these little moments, and I had relapsed once again, and she thought I was clean. And I told her I was job searching, but I had fallen asleep picking her up from work. And she's like, I knew you were using again. I go, why? She goes, because it's 105 outside, and you're asleep in the car, and you're sweating bullets, and you're putting 100 miles a day on my car in Merced. Where are you going? So I've had all these little things that have happened in my life that let me know, like, this is not the life for me.
Right.
And so these are the things that happened to me that let me know, like, I'm not cut out for this. Like, I was a straight A student. I got a 4-year scholarship to a full ride to Northridge University in California. And here I am, like, squatting over a bucket.
Right.
Like there was a grander scheme for my life if I could only stop. You know what I mean? And so, what I know is that at some point, we get high, but at some point we all come down. And thank God that one day I came down and I was down long enough that I didn't pick up again.
Right. And like where we hang out, it's always said it doesn't matter what or how much you used, only what you want to do about your problem and how we get. So it doesn't matter if you started using when you were 6 or you were 26, right? And people get the misconception like how deep you can go in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, people say you just keep, your bottom is whatever you make it, but keep digging.
Right.
Keep digging. And I got to the point where I didn't want to dig anymore. I had lost everything. What people take 20 years to lose, I had lost in those 6 short years.
Right. Yeah, because it doesn't take long, especially if you're 120% in, right?
120% in, yeah.
So you talk about, your first experience at a treatment facility and walking in there and covering your face and not wanting to be seen. And there was multiple times before this thing actually stuck. So would you say like your first treatment facility, like seeds were planted and you started understanding concepts about recovery, but you just couldn't stop, or you didn't want to stop, or you thought, hey, maybe I'm going to go successfully use? Right?
Absolutely. I went through this same treatment facility twice. And at this treatment facility, that's exactly where the seeds were planted, about what 12 steps were, where to go, how to get there, about getting connected, working 12 steps, working 12 traditions. But my thought was, I can use and use successfully, and I actually got kicked out of the treatment facility the first time, because I wasn't honest with my finances, what money I was giving to them, what money I was giving to home. So I stayed clean until I hit that 90-day mark, and I celebrated on the 91st day, and so I went in again, and I started using midway through my time there, and so in their eyes, I successfully completed, but I was still using while I was in the program. But at that point, I had been introduced to the meetings. I knew where to go. So when I exited with a certificate of completion, even though I was not clean while I was there, I was still using. And then I was out for like another 3 years or so, 3 or 4 years. And then I was a revolving door before I finally stayed clean. But I knew where to go, and I had this one meeting that I would attend every Thursday on a regular basis, and there was a piano bench there. And so whenever I went in, whoever was there, whoever had that seat, they would get up for me and allow me to rest my head there, Right. And so just the love that I got at that meeting, at any meeting really, was just phenomenal. It was the one place that was safe for me, where I didn't have to scam. I wasn't getting scammed, and it was a safe place for me. And so the welcoming acceptance that I got there is one of the reasons that I continue to come back.
And so like, even though you were going out, coming back, and not necessarily staying clean, the people in these rooms always welcomed you back.
The love is what brought me back. The
Right.
love is what drew me in. The acceptance, the unconditional love, and the unconditional positive regard is what brought me back and is why I stay.
And so like for you, like what was the shift in Tanya to the point of like, okay, I'm here again, to the point where it actually sticks, right? Like can you recognize like a shift in maybe your attitude, your behaviors, or was it just enough's enough? Sorensen's also has a Modesto location located at 1433 Coffee Road. Modesto, true value for all your hardware needs. For all of our people out in the Modesto area, please support those who support us. Thank you.
I think it's really about hitting your bottom. I think it's twofold. I think it's about hitting your bottom, and I think it's about the support of the people that allow you to do your process and about not enabling you. It's funny because I went to Bakersfield to see my sister this weekend. They had a convention, but we stayed with my sister. I have a new nephew that was born, and we were kind of talking about how I was when I was out there using. And my sister was like, you don't remember when you did this and you acted like this, and I saw you walking down the street, and I was like, I have no recollection. None.
Right.
And she goes, but I asked you to stop. My sister was actually the one who outed me and told my family that I was using. And I had a memory of it this way. And she goes, no, I actually heard you making a deal with your dealer. And I said, really? She says, yeah. I go, you don't remember that? I go, no, I remember this. And she goes, I told you, I begged you to stop. And you said, I'm not going to stop until I'm done. You can't make me stop. And it's my choice. And I said, really? And she goes, you have no memory? I said, no. And then one day she said, I came to her. My sister said, I came to her and I said, I'm done. Like, I don't want to live like this anymore. Like, I'm ready to stop. But I have no memory of that. But what I can tell you is that when I was ready to stop, like, there were people there. I had one person in my life that through all my using who was always there to say, you can do this. I knew you before you used. I knew you using, and I know who you can be when you're ready. There was always one support person in my life that didn't enable me, but that encouraged me. So with my desire to stay clean, you know, it says the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using. And so with that desire and that one person who believed in me, like, I think that and the love I got in the rooms, I think all that coupled is what helped.
Right. Well, and that's like the amazing thing, right? When you see somebody come in, you can never measure one's desire, right? You don't know what's going on inside that person, you know. And so, like, I don't even know. I lost my train of thought, which often happens to me. So, like, where does it go from that point forward, right? So, like, you stop using. I got to imagine, like, you don't automatically get everything back, like, boom.
Heck no. Heck no.
What does early recovery look like for Tanya?
You know, I didn't lose my kids to CPS. My mom took my son. I mean, my mom took my daughter, which is ironic because I worked for CPS for about 12 years once I got clean.
And how old were they when you got clean?
So I have two children. I have a son and a daughter. My son is not my biological son. We share him. He has a biological mom, but the kids were raised together as brother and sister. So his mom had him, and my daughter went to my mom. But once I got clean, you know, I was working at Pizza Hut. I was doing in-home care. I was cleaning houses, you know, and then I was being a short order cook and a waitress up in Cathy's Valley, which was about a 40-minute drive. So I was working about 3.5 jobs. And I remember one day, I was praying to my higher power and I was just like, man, my feet hurt, my back hurt. I'm so tired, you know, wah, 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 poor me, poor me. And I was having trouble like hearing from my higher power and hearing his voice. And distinctly, I heard my higher power say, just be happy where I put you. And I was like, wow, okay, I'll be happy where you put me. But back up a little bit. I was doing in-home care for this lady. And she was in the program. She was about 70 years old, and she was clean. She went through the same treatment facility. But I was having trouble setting boundaries because she had me, as her in-home care provider, she had me go buy her jugs of wine. And I was having issues with that. You know, she was my boss, go buy me wine. I bought her wine. And I went to this convention, and I was like, I wasn't hearing my higher power's voice. And I was like, I can't hear, you know, and every time I relapsed, they said, get a higher power. And I couldn't connect with a higher power. I wasn't hearing him. And I'm like, that's the thing that's missing. That's the connection that I can't get. And we were at this convention and they were singing, you might not get what you want, but you always get what you need. And I remember saying, are you there, God? And in my left ear, I heard, I am. And I was like, are you talking to me, God? And in my left ear, I heard, I am. And I'm like, who are you, God? And he said, I am, in my left ear. And I was like, I'm good. You know, and so right then I knew that I had a higher power that was there for Tanya, you know. And also distinctly I heard, if you buy her more wine, she will die. And so I called the lady and I said, I love you, but I can't buy you no more wine. Click. Before I lost my courage. And the lady was very understanding. But I was able to set a boundary very early in recovery. I was about 6 months clean. And she allowed me to continue to work for her. And so those are the jobs that I had in my early recovery. And then it kind of continued to progress from there. And so I've been at the same job that I have had for about 18 years now.
Right. So what do you do now?
Well, so I worked from Merced County. So I did CPS. So I detained children. I worked in adoptions. I worked in reunification of families for about 12 years. Now I'm working in mental health.
Right.
So I love it.
Right. And so you get to give back to the community. Yeah. Right. So, but like going back to like your early recovery and working all those jobs, how frustrating was it for somebody that had like a professional life, then lost it, and then you have to go back to, and I understand like, okay, I'm clean. I'm grateful that I get this opportunity, But how hard was it for you to keep going, knowing what you had, and then in early recovery, probably pretty frustrating, right?
Very humbling.
Yeah.
It's very humbling to like know that I went to school, I went to college, and I had some schooling under my belt to like kind of have to start over. You know, I have a twin brother, and my twin brother, which we shared a little bit before.
Yeah, the one with the cool police car.
The one with the cool police car.
Right.
You know, that my brother, so I have a twin brother, and we have a baby sister. She's 6 years younger. To know that my brother is very accomplished, and my sister is also very accomplished. There's just 3 of us. And to know that I was kind of like the bad seed, or, you know, the one that run astray or went awry, to have to really earn my family's trust again and earn their respect. And the worry that I put upon my parents. And I just don't ever want to do that to my family again. You know, I really do believe that we are a reflection of our family, of our parents. Our kids are a reflection of us. And all I have are my dad's been dead about 10 years. My mother just passed in April of last year. It hasn't even been a year. All I have left are my siblings and my wife and my 2 children. And so I'm a reflection of them. You know, we have a name to uphold, and I really believe strongly in that. And when my mom was on her deathbed, you know, we told her, you know, and I said, and she has a best friend, and the best friend told me later, she goes, you know, your mom is like worried about you the most, Tanya. I deal with mental illness as well as working to stay clean. And so, and I had a bout about a year ago where I was curled up in the fetal position, couldn't get out of bed. I was off work for 3 months. Like I really, really struggled. And so I think because of that, like my mom worried about me the most.
Right.
I'm worried like if something happens to me, what's going to happen to my daughter? Like she's not going to be able to function. She's going to fall flat on her face. She's going to die without me. You know what I mean? And so I told my mom, I go, you know, I have my wife, you know, Melba's okay. Omar's okay. Like we're okay. Like I've been clean a while. I have a support system. If you need to go, you can go. You know, my mom got very ill, and she died in 28 days. It was fast. And so, and here I sit, you know, what we say is we don't use no matter what, you know, and I didn't.
When it's funny because you talk about, you know, your family being so accomplished, right? And when I walk in your house, I see one of the greatest accomplishments I could see from any person.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I walk in and I see a loving household, right? I see all your family here. Everybody's so supportive, right? We're doing this. And I personally, like, because my perception has shifted since I got clean. You know, when I first got clean, I'm like, I'm going to tackle the world. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to do. And for me, my greatest accomplishment is having, you know, a supportive, loving family, right? So when I walk into somebody's house and I feel that warmth, that's what most people don't have, right? And so I think we're a representation of the homes that we live in, right? And getting to walk into your house, you feel it. You feel the love and the supportiveness. I don't know why I had to say that, but I feel like I should say that. So, like, what did it mean to you, like for your parents and everything, to see you get back on track? How long did it take for you to earn their trust back, right? I know that's not the process, but I know that's a big thing for us in recovery, and it takes a while.
It took, my gosh, I mean, because I had so many broken promises, you know, I'm sorry, I'll do better, you know, not this time, I mean it, you know. I remember I walked in, you know, because, you know, I was a straight A student, editor of the yearbook, president of the Black Student Union. I was in the choir. I was in the Young Women's Mission. You know, I did all these things, you know, and I was like, my brother was like a gymnastics coach, and he was on the football team. And we were both very accomplished, like athletes and straight A students, and got scholarships. I got a scholarship to college. And so I was like the goody two shoes and the smart one. And they had all these expectations, and I started using like so late in life. So like using was like the last thing that they expected of me. And so when I started using, that was like not what they thought. Like I was sick, it was mental illness. Why are you losing weight? And I'm walking to work every day. Of course I'm losing weight. You know what I mean? I'm on a diet. You know what I mean? And then I walked in my mom's house one day, and, you know, I was married previously, got divorced, went on the East Coast and came back. And then my mom said, where are you going? I'm walking out of her house with my daughter's TV. I'm like, I'll be back. Never came back with a TV, you know, and just all these things happened. And so, and then I went to rehab and got out. and relapse, went to rehab again, got out, relapse, and then the other cycle started of just trying to go in and out of the rooms. So it probably took maybe the first year before they began to want to try to really believe that maybe, just maybe, I might stay clean.
Right.
You know, and then I lost my housing due to no fault of my own. It was like a Section 8 thing. Like there was a fire, everybody had to move, but I didn't have the money for the deposit because I just started working. And so we reached out to my brother to help me, like, you know, relocate. And my brother was like, is she really clean? Like, I'll give her the money, but I'm not going to give it to you. I'll give it to mom. Mom, you pay it. And then, you know, and all this stuff. So it took longer for my siblings. So maybe the first 3 years before they really begin to trust. But you're right. Like, my mind has shifted, you know, because I'm a purist. You know, I believe in one program, one set of 12 steps, one set of traditions, one solution for all that ails me. But when I first got here, it was like pounding the literature and that's it and that's all. And I kind of lost perspective in the beginning. But now it's about finding that balance and having my family, shifting my priorities. It's about being in service, but still having like the people I love around me. You know what I mean? And spreading, like, they got me back, but they don't got me back if I'm never home.
Right.
If I'm never available, if I'm never present.
And I get it, because when I first got out of treatment, I was at meetings 7 days a week, service this, service that. And there's a reading, we have this daily reading that we read, and there's one that talks about being of service to the family as well, right? And it was funny because my sponsor hit me with that. You know, he's like, you know, there's such thing as being of service to your family too, right? And I understand that it works where we hang out, but sometimes it's our job as recovering addicts to get out in the world and show these people that it works too, right? And so, you know, you talked about being a part of the county and doing all these things. So you're not only practicing the program in your personal life, but you're out here in the community, you know, showing people that what you're doing really works. Like, but is that frustrating for you too, when you're dealing with people that are going through these issues and you have the answers, but you can't beat it into them, right? So, like, what does that look like? I mean, I got to imagine there's some days you probably come home and you're fit to be tied. Like, if they would just do A, B, and C, right? Like,
oh, my gosh. Because I know, you know, as a parent, I'm like, I'm always right. You know, sometimes in the program, I'm like, I'm always right. You know, because I really do believe, like, the program I'm a part of really is a solution. You know what I mean? And so it's funny, when I first got clean, I was like, you know, I'm Black, I have mental illness, I'm a lesbian, so I have all these things and strikes and, you know, tallies. So if you're going to love me, love me. If you're going to hate me. And so when I first got clean, I just didn't realize, like, what was shareable, what was meant to be private or whatnot. So I just shared it all, you know, because I just didn't know. And so I'm working at the county and I tell everybody all my strikes or possible strikes, so they would either hate me, love me, accept me or not. And so I was at the county, and then I moved to mental health. And I'm like, I'm just going to disclose what's necessary. Too late. I've been around so long. I've been at the county so long. I met my first boss at mental health, and she goes, oh, I know you. You're the one that goes to those meetings, and you go to that retreat every year. That's great. Can you tell us where the meetings are and kind of hook you up and kind of give someone your number? And so I'm like, absolutely. So, but I found out what I thought would be like a hindrance really hasn't. And so people come to me for help or for guidance and for assistance. But what I need to learn is that acceptance is truly the key to happiness.
right.
You know, and so I just have to practice that on a daily basis. And you're right. Sometimes, like, I'm super fit to be tied, because I'm just like, if you would just like take one little tiny bit of advice, you know, like, maybe your life could change. So what I know is that I get to be a light, I get to be an example, and I just get to live the program today. And sometimes people ask me why I'm so happy, and I get to share that, and sometimes they don't.
Right. And so, like, you touched on your mental health quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you balance recovery with mental health, and how do you balance, like, when to give it away and when to keep some for yourself? You know, because I know a lot of us struggle with that, especially like me. I'm fortunate. Maybe I do deal with. I think I'm probably on the spectrum of some sort of mental health issue, right? You don't get here because you're perfect. Maybe I'm in denial, but, like, how do you balance that, right? Because I know, like, a lot of us just want to help, and then we end up depleted. Like, how do you gauge that for yourself? And
That one, I think I'm at the point now where I have a healthy balance. When I first got clean, I went and I got a sponsor early on in recovery. I got in service my first 30 days. I've never stopped being in service. But I told my sponsor, I go, this is my diagnosis. And I think I need extra help or possible medication. And she goes, let's give it a year. Let's give it a year. You haven't had times for your synapses to reconnect and for your brain to get rewired. Let's wait a year, and then we'll go from there. A year later, she was like, yeah, let's go get that extra help. Because
Yeah.
she goes, you are all over the place. You know what I mean? And so I went to mental health and got the help that I needed. But it's about, like, I have so much in me that I want to give and so much that I want to help. I was very unbalanced. You know what I mean? You were talking about 6 service commitments, no time for the kids, no balance anywhere. So there are times that I will not step back from service, but say, I'm not going to be the chair of all the committees. I'll be the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary. You know what I mean? So it's about figuring out what commitments I can do that still allow me to be able to give to myself, but still feel like I'm giving to the fellowship.
Yeah, and I can relate. Because when I got clean, I was getting clean off of benzos and opiates and all this stuff. And so my first year, I was all over the place as far as where I felt in my head, or I wasn't able to be happy. I could sit there at Christmas and be like this, be that guy, right? And I did the same thing that you did. I just sat it out, right? And sometimes I feel like I'm still just Debbie Downer, right? Everybody in my house will be having fun, and I'll be in a pissy mood, and so I'll expect you to be in a pissy mood, right?
Yep,
What's wrong with you? Why are you so happy, right? So I get it. I think, and that's the funny thing was you were one of the first women speakers that came to Los Banos and spoke, and I'm like, oh, I can identify, right? It's these little hurdles we get over, and I would always think oh, I can identify with the men. They're the only ones. But they're across the board, we're so much the same, right? The differences are so minute, and so you got clean in the rooms, right? Your last time, and that always interests me because my sponsor will say, "Oh, look they paid $60,000 for a $13 book." What was that process like? Because I think that's so commendable, right? Being left to your own free will. 23 hours a day, and then maybe hitting a meeting or something for an hour. How do you stay clean in that process? At the very beginning? Because I think that's what people want to really know, the people that are struggling out there. What did you do to fill that time, or what kept you clean,
Well, I'm grateful to treatment, because treatment introduced me to the rooms. I literally had never heard of a 12-step program, but once I went to the rooms, we got fortunate because I think we didn't even have a meeting a day when I first got here. But when they gave a number, I called it. When they said sit in a meeting, I sat in the meeting. My sponsor taught me, I got that sponsor, and I still have the same sponsor, but I really followed her direction. When I was ready, I was ready. So when she said write, I did the writing. I read the meditation, you know what I mean? And I called her and we went over step work, you know what I mean? And so I think it really is about a mindset. And when she said go to the meeting, I went to the meeting, and it's really about getting in service. And so you really, I don't know. We are not shy people. I'm a shy person. It doesn't seem like I'm shy, but I'm not shy within my circle. When, you put me in a room full of people, I really am kind of quiet and shy, but we need to feel needed. So I insert myself in the middle of stuff. You know what I mean? I took my grandson to the meeting the other day, and I was like, hey, I need you to help me pick up those chairs, move these chairs, and he needs to feel needed. He needs to feel a part of. Right. You know what I mean? And so I think it's about inserting ourselves in and saying, can I help? What can I do? Or we make the newcomer feel needed. And so I think that's what kept me clean until the next meeting, because at 30 days they go, we need you to do such and such. And so I knew that I had a job to do, and so I needed to stay for the next job.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's that early service commitment, I think, that is what made me stay. You know what I mean? Or feeling like and seeing the next person, because I knew my sponsor was going to be at the next meeting. So I think that's why it's important for old timers to still attend meetings.
Yes.
You know, because my sponsor was like, I'll see you Wednesday, I'll see you Thursday, I'll see you Friday. And because I knew I was going to see her, like, I kept coming because she was my one connection
right
to the meetings.
And feeling like you wanted to prove yourself to this person,
Yeah,
right?
like I had a point to prove at that point. Like, okay, I'm a person that when I keep a commitment, like I have a commitment, like I keep it. She's like, are you going to be there? Yes, I'll be there. And so, fuck, I made a commitment. I can't, like, I got to be there now. Like, shoot, I said it, so I got to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not a person that breaks commitments. Like it hurts my spirit to say I don't hold it. You know what I mean?
Right. And so now you have 20 years clean,
Mm-hmm.
right? Congratulations,
Thank you.
by the way. That's awesome. Hopefully one day I'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what keeps you plugged into the recovery process? Because I know, like, for a lot of people, like, because we do have people that listen to this that aren't even addicts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even, like, people ask me, like, oh, you're still going to those meetings? How long are you going to go to those meetings? Hopefully the rest of my life, right?
Forever, ever.
Yeah.
Trust me, forever, ever. Okay.
So, like, what keeps you so engaged to the process after 20 years?
You know, because when I first came around, my sponsor was there. There was I can name the 4 or 5 people that were there when I first got here and first started trying to get clean. 6 years later, those same people were still there. And what I did in the beginning is what I still need to do today. And sometimes, I ain't gonna lie, it gets tedious. It gets boring. It gets monotonous. Some of the same people, I'm like, man, really? Like, it is. But so does my job. And I know if I want a paycheck, it gets tedious. It gets boring. It gets monotonous. But if I want a paycheck, I better show my butt up. Right. You know what I mean? And if I want any quality of life, like, I got to do the same thing. You know what I mean? And so that's why we have conventions and we have campouts and we have retreats and we have those other things to spice it up, you know, just like they got retreats at work and they have like little dress up days and stuff like that. They do things to kind of spice it up a little bit. You know what I mean? So, because the minute I stopped going to meetings, you know, they say an addict alone is in bad company, and I can justify and minimize and rationalize any behavior in my head by myself.
Right.
And so the minute I stop going to meetings, I'll make any behavior look okay, any lie be okay. I'll make myself seem grandiose, and then I'll start doing behaviors that are not okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then I'll lose my family, my wife, my home, my dogs. I told my wife, I go, if I relapse, I'm telling you right now, mortgage ain't getting paid. Anything out of my mouth is a lie. And so change the locks, lock the door, and go get an apartment. Yeah. Because we've lost it all. Materially. We're not even talking about spiritually.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's what, like, a lot of people get disconnected from the fact that the next one may be the last one, mm-hmm. right? Like, and I was reminded of this. We had a newcomer come in not too long ago, and he was disrupting the meeting, whatever, walked out, came back in, sat through the meeting, and then we talked for a long period, you know, after the meeting, and he was standing up in front of the table and we were talking, and he says, how long do I got to do these fucking classes, right? Because they always call them classes.
Classes, yeah, they do.
And there was an old timer, Jose T, who you know,
mm-hmm.
right? And he's like shuffling out the door. And I said, hey, Jose, how long you been doing these classes? And he's like, 30-some years. And I said, you haven't graduated yet? And he's like, never will, right?
Yep.
And unfortunately, that newcomer died 2 weeks later, right? And that's the reality of this thing, right? And,
mm-hmm.
and I feel like sometimes when we sit around here long enough, we get a little cozy
mm-hmm.
that we think that that's that far away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what keeps me engaged in this process. I know if I go back out, not only am I giving all that stuff away, but I'm probably dead,
mm-hmm.
right? In your years being around here, how many people have you seen, you think, that have been in that are no longer with us?
Oh my gosh, like I can't even count it on 2 hands. And 20 years is not, I mean, it's some time, but it's not time. It's relative when you think about the many people that have died that just myself know. You know what I mean? But even still, like, it gets repetitive and stuff like that. But also when you look at somebody, like, you get to see them come in the rooms and you really get to see them get it. You get to see it click. You get to see them get their children back or their sense of self-esteem, you know, or them not beat their court case, but you know what I mean? You get to see them, like, wow, they're not going to prison for life, or they only got probation. You know, you just get to see them change and their life change. You're like, wow, I remember that feeling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's all these other miracles that you get to witness and be a little participant in. You know, I'm on the outside looking in, and those are miracles. You know, and I miss that if I'm not there.
Right.
You know,
those are those God shots.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what was funny, because I dropped off a bunch of stuff at the Salvation Army yesterday. You know, and there was a guy in the program I went to in Stockton, and he was asking me, he's like, "Do you still go to church?" And I'm like, "No, I never go to church anymore." I said, "But I go to a 12-step fellowship. That's my church." And that's when I see God moving in a room. When you see somebody picking up 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, all the things that you were mentioning, people getting stuff back. Like, for me, that's like the God shot right there. That is church for me. Right?
I was with one of my best friends. We've been friends for about 18 years. We were in court one day, and the judge wanted to give him like 3 years in prison. And it was at the time we were in church too. And so it was me, the pastor, the pastor's wife. There's like 5 of us in court. And like right before court, the prosecutor was like, "Nope, we're not agreeing to nothing. We want to give him prison." And in court, you could see the prosecutor go, "Nope, we want to offer treatment." You could just see God move in the room. He's like, "Treatment?" And we were like, "That's right." But you missed that stuff. And the prosecutor like couldn't even believe what was coming out of his mouth. You know what I mean? So you get to see those things, how God just moves, you know. And I was dating someone years ago, and they went through 12 steps, and we were dating, and their parents were so grateful that 12 steps got their daughter clean. Right. That they gave us a location to meet, and we met in that place for like 15 years. We just recently changed our location about 2 years ago, like through COVID. And those are the miracles that happen. We were meeting in a park under a tree. We started a women's meeting, and then we changed our no, that was a different location. But we anyway, we got to meet because they said, "You got this program got our daughter clean. Of course, we'll give you a location." And so we had a location for almost 15 years. I mean, those are the miracles that happen in recovery. Right. Just gratitude for like getting our lives back, and just being a productive member of society. You know, my first apartment I got clean, and the little old lady that I told you about that I bought a jug of wine for, she was like a little like she was like, her husband was like in the military and part of like the Veterans Club, and so I had been evicted, you know, from using, and I was trying to get an apartment, and the lady told her apartment lady, she goes, "I like her. She's sweet. She's good to me. Give her a chance." And the apartment lady said, "Because you said so, I'll give her a chance." That's how I got my first apartment. You know what I mean? And so those are the beautiful things that happen in recovery. And, you know, I've never had an eviction since, you know, because of having that good record, I have a home today. Right. You know, and so like we stay clean no matter what. And God opened doors. You never know who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And because we just act right. Because we act right. We don't act right when we're out there on the streets. No. You know what I mean? We don't act right. We lie, steal, cheat, and manipulate. But we get clean and we get a little act right about us, and our lives change, and we get to change others' lives. You know, and that's, I think, is my purpose. You know, for so long, I didn't know what my purpose was. I know my purpose today is to love, be loving, caring, and kind, and help sponsor women and help influence their lives so that they can be kind, caring, and loving people and help influence others' lives so that we don't have to use and that we don't have to give in to that desire to use, you know.
So would you say at 20 years clean, you're perfect now?
No, by no means perfect. Always a work in progress. Always.
So like, and it's funny because I constantly think like there's a difference between character defects and shortcomings, right? Like the shortcoming would be acting out on the character defect.
Absolutely.
Because I thought at like, because I'm only, I'm at 6.5 years now, a little over like 6 years, 7 months, right? Since you named
seems like you've been around forever.
Oh, right. I've been right. And so I'm like, I should be healed by now, right? But I think the major difference between when I came in and now is I don't have to entertain this right here, right? And so as the time goes on, does that get easier?
You mean acting out on our defects?
Putting those away, right? Putting those thoughts away and or are they still there, just a little quieter, sometimes a little louder?
They're on the shelf.
Right.
And it depends on my mood for the day, whether I take them off or not. I went to a business meeting yesterday, and I'm chair of that committee. I'm chair of that women's retreat committee, and somebody pissed me off. And so I went to the vice chair. I was like, can I be unspiritual for like 2.2 seconds? She said, absolutely. So I whispered in her ear, and then I put it back on the shelf.
Right.
You know, so it really depends. Like, you know, 8 out of 10 times I can be spiritual. 2.2, I make a choice not to be. Like, it's just a fact. You know what I mean? It takes for this addict, it takes a concerted effort to be spiritual. I'm just not born spiritual. I'm just not spiritual just because I'm clean. Like, I have to make a choice to practice spiritual principles on a daily basis. You know,
Right.
I'm no way perfect. I try to walk my talk. You know, I try to live in spiritual principles. But sometimes, like, I make a choice like, nope, I don't like her. She irks me. And I'm going to speak on it. I'm going to speak on it right now. Because if I don't at least speak on it and take a little power out of it with somebody that can hold that for me, with me, you know, and then they can speak a little spirituality back, like, it's going to fester and it's going to grow.
Right.
You know what I mean? Sometimes I got to just say it, you know, whether that's right or wrong, it's who I am.
Right.
You know, my sponsor wasn't there, and then, you know, and I just was like upset. So I said it, and then I was able to let it go, you know, but that process works for me. But I also say it to somebody that can
handle
it and handle me and allow me my process.
Yeah. And I get it, because I'm the same exact way. Sometimes I just wake up and I'm like, whoever it is going to fucking get it today, right? and that shit just happens, right? Like, and I think that's the misconception is like when I got clean, I was like, fuck, I got to be a priest now, right? You know, but that's it. And if I fell short of that, I fell short, right? But now today I understand I don't have to be perfect, right? But I do got to tell on myself.
Yes.
Right? And that was a foreign thing, telling on myself when I first got clean. That was hard, but I've mastered the art of telling on myself. Sometimes, you know, it's like me and Jesse spend a lot of time together now traveling on the road. He hears the wildest shit come out of my mouth, right? and even like, you know, like it's just funny. Like, just because we get clean doesn't mean we got to be perfect.
That's right.
And we're not going to be perfect. We're people. And if we were, this life wouldn't be that much fun.
You asked earlier sometimes how I manage my mental health. You know, on a bad day, like, I don't show up for people. I know if it's a really bad day, like, I can't be spiritual. I can't hold your stuff. I can't be that person. So those are some days, like, I don't answer the phone. You know, I might reply to a text, but it'll be very short. Talk to you later, call you tomorrow. But I can't be that person to everybody that day. Like, I have quite a few sponsees, and some days, like, I can't do it. And so on those days, I just don't, because I know that I don't have anything spiritual to give. So I don't. Yeah. They got other people. That's why it says have a support system, not a support person.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so they need to reach the fuck out.
Well, and that's growth right there, right? Because that means you don't think that you're so important that everything rests on you.
Right.
Right. And sometimes you're doing them a service if you're going to do it, because they may call and be like, hey, this motherfucker cut me off in traffic. And you're like, I just go get him. Right. Maybe you should chase them down, right?
Yeah, that's right. Right.
Oh, man. So, like, I always like to, you know, ask the person that I'm sitting across from, like, so, like, say there is somebody out there that's struggling right now with mental health issues and addiction, or they just think they can't do it. Like, what would you tell somebody that said, like I need help, but I don't know how to get it, right? Or I don't think this is right for me, or any of those million excuses that we had coming in. Like, what would you tell somebody out there that's struggling right now?
Hope is never dead, you know, and I'll believe until you believe. Right. And if you don't think this is for you, let's find something that is for you, you know, because there is something that will work for you. It might not be my program, but there is a program. You know, let's figure out what that is. We can figure it out together.
Right. And so you work for Merced County Mental Health. So if somebody's hearing this and they happen to be inside of Merced County, what would they do to find help? You know,
in Merced County?
In Merced, yeah, since that's your wheelhouse, since that's where you work, you know.
Well, we do mental health assessments. They'd have to go through something called Access, which they would call the main number 209-381-6800, and then they would say they want to do a mental health assessment, and they'd reach out for the Access team, and they would do like a quick 15-minute assessment, see if they meet qualifications for an assessment. And then if that's the case, then they would schedule you for an assessment appointment, which is called a POE. Right. And then they would do a POE assessment and then see if they meet criteria for services.
And that probably is the same for anybody listening to this anywhere in the country. Your county, city has to have some sort of behavioral health center, and it's probably pretty easy to Google. Or if you found this podcast, you have the ability to find some help out there.
Absolutely.
Right? So anyway, I think we hit it, Tanya. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for allowing me to be of service. Thank you. My pleasure.
And thank you for allowing us in your house, right? And so we end this thing the same way we always end it, with a hug. So you owe me a hug. Tanya, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Not so anonymous with the. No, I can't do it. I'm sorry. Not so